Hi, this is Karen Vasil-Busch, and welcome to our first in a series of wellness cooking using the principles of Ayurveda. And this is cooking from the kitchen. Let's cook healthy meals. And today we're going to do a number of different things. I've got produce from our garden. This is the half of an acorn squash, and I've been cutting it up because we're going to make some acorn squash soup that's more like a bisque, inspired by some of the cooking from Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. I've made my own little touches and tweaks with it. But before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about setting up a kitchen for cooking. I wasn't born a cook. I have to say I've acquired that skill over the years. My in-laws were great cooks, really more gourmet cooks than although later in life, my mother-in-law became a very good macrobiotic cook because of her health condition. But I've begun to really appreciate good cooking. And good cooking starts with really simple things. I'm looking at this knife and saying, this is one of the knives I use. It's a serrated knife. And I use this more than probably, if you need one thing in the kitchen for cutting, maybe two good knives, one about this size and another one for paring, if you're doing a pairing, if you're coring apples or fruits. So these two things are excellent. And what I recommend, well, I don't know if I have a sharpener here to show you. Yeah, I recommend you keep them as sharp as you can, because keeping a knife sharp really helps protect the knife, and this is an interesting sharpener. It goes in like this. You hold it and it sharpens the edges of the knife with a stone. I usually, quite frankly, leave the sharpening up to my husband. I don't mean to sound sexist, but it's just the way I am. He keeps them really in good condition. But a sharp knife, you can feel it, with your hands. It's going to cut well. I protect this knife with it's broken now, but I protect it with a cover when I'm putting it away, because if you do this, then it won't damage. The knife will stay sharper if you have it in a cover. Some people do have their knives on the counter with, this is an inexpensive set. It's not my best set, but it's in a little sheath, so it's in a wooden sheath. And these are kind of my backup knives. The other thing I have in the kitchen are cutting boards, and a number of different size cutting boards. This cutting board, I don't use anything, I don't use meat on it. I usually cut fruit and not garlic, because garlic has a tendency to, garlic is a very sticky substance, so it tends to, create a little odor. So I use plastic cutting boards for that. I scrub them every now and then with scrubbies, and even these, I have two sizes of these plastic ones, and these can go in the dishwasher, but you can put a solution of light bleach, scrub them, and then put them in the dishwasher. You really can keep them very clean and odor free. So I have the luxury of having this kitchen that has open, drawers that I can grab things that are handy for me. This drawer has my measuring cups. It has pastry brushes when I'm making flatbreads and I need to put some oil on the flatbread. It has kitchen scissors, which are handy again to have, because for cutting things, cilantro, I'm growing, hoping I'm keeping this good growing throughout the winter, this little cilantro and basil. My daughter got this. She was visiting from California, and her cooking has kind of created, taken on the Spanish flavor, and she used a lot of basil and limes and lemons. So, and I like basil. Basil's really good. But so that's all I have to say about that. And of course, mixing bowls and spoons, all those things. Every now and then I weed things out. If I don't, I need just a standard few things. A set of 3 size mixing bowls, really all you need. Sometimes you need a larger bowl, a large size stainless steel. I'm hiding. Where did I go? This bowl. I have a gigantic bowl, but I use this. We're making. My husband likes to make pizza in our oven here, which is over. Blah, 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 blah. If I can show it to you with that. There's the oven. There's the Tulukidi oven. That's a bake oven. So occasionally we make a pizza, which isn't really Ayurvedic, but you know, why not? And excuse me for a minute, I'm gonna put this away. And of course, different strainers for grains. So I use these to help, you know, for washing things. So that's about all I have to say about that. Of course, yeah, measuring spoons. Sometimes measuring, you get an eye for that. So, you don't need to be exact for some things you do. So the first thing I do in the morning, actually, according to Ayurveda, the taking water and boiling it takes the water-soluble gases out of the water and creates a lightness in the water. And that aids our digestion. So every morning I'll boil a pot of water. I actually haven't done that yet this morning, so I'm going to put that on the stove. So it's called cooking water. The story behind this is that there was a doctor of Ayurveda, they're called Vajas, visiting this country, and he was working with taking consultations, and they take the pulse of the individual and make suggestions for them based on that and based on maybe tongue analysis and face analysis. And he had to leave to go back to his home country, and he didn't have enough time to see all his patients. This is a loose transliteration of this story. And so he suggested that everybody just drink cooked water because he knew that eventually that will aid their digestion. And when your digestion is strong, then the food that you take assimilates in the body. It goes to all the areas, it builds the cells, the tissues, all the way from the cell level up through the bone marrow. And in Ayurveda, they're built in sequentially. So the cooked water just helps with digestion. So that's why I do that. And so we're gonna let that go on the stove for a little bit. I thought I'd start with something really simple. I'll talk about these, what I have out here on this, my island, give you a little photo of that. So I've set things up because Ayurveda acknowledges 6 distinct tastes in their meal preparation. They like to include all of them. And we as Americans may be familiar with some of the tastes. And the first 3 are tastes that are sweet, sour, and salty. And those, the attributes of those tastes are building. They build up due to the elements, due to the elements of these tastes, due to the mahabhuts. These elements are bitter, pungent, and astringent, and they reduce things. So we may not be as familiar with bitterness, but bitterness can come from some herbs. It can come from fruits. I mean, this is a pomegranate, that's astringent. And so when you add some of these things to your meal, you're balancing out the meal. And believe it or not, when you do that, also you kind of have a feeling of satisfaction. You don't feel a lag, blood sugar level low, or kind of a craving for anything else after a meal. I remember back in the day, a traditional Thanksgiving meal. I go to my parents' house, we'd have the turkey, the mashed potato, and squash and vegetables, and then the pie. And about an hour later, I was still feeling like either exhausted, tired because of the heaviness of the meal, or I was feeling like I needed to eat again. So that was because the meal was kind of over here on the salty sweet end and didn't have the balance of the flavors of bitter, pungent, and astringent. One of the doctors I've studied with online, Dr. Shakir, talks about the standard American diet. He says, standard American diet, SAD, it is sad diet. So take that, as you will, but there are so many varieties of things to choose from. Well, so why not? So here we have apples. Apples are sweet, and apples are in season for the fall. So those are great things to add to your everyday diet. Raw, yes, but you can cook them, and when you cook them, they're a little easier to assimilate. This recipe we're going to do today with the bisque, with the acorn squash, has apples in it. The sour component of a meal would be lemons and limes. I'm not adding that, but I am using vinegar, and vinegar is a little sour and acidic. And then salty miso is, I'm going to be using that in this recipe. This is made with, I think it's made with handmade rice miso, and it's a fermented substance. It's very sweet, but it's salty at the same time. So it's a fermented rice product. It says it's a whole protein. It's good for vegetarian diets. It's used in a small amount for flavoring, and it has a lot of probiotic attributes to it. Going to be using some of these herbs. What I've got in here, I've got cinnamon that I'm going to be using today. I'm just going to be using that in this recipe. The other herbs, spices. This is turmeric, and I love this little spice box because I use the spice box constantly, and I like to keep spices fresh. I say spices don't die, they just fade away. So if you get small amounts of spices and either grind them or buy a small amount and use them quickly, you're better off. I do grind my own cardamom. So this is cardamom powder. And I use a little dedicated grinder. I'll show you what that is. You've seen them before, I'm sure. They're coffee grinders, but this is dedicated for spices. And I grind my spices with this. I buy the seeds whole in the small amounts. So you can use a mortar and pestle, of course. That's not what I do. It's not really necessary. Some people like that. All right, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna move that a little bit. All right. So these spices here I have for something for us to make a tea out of. The cumin, coriander. This is cumin and coriander and fennel. I'm going to roast those if we have time and make a tea. The cumin, coriander, fennel tea is a classic tea in the fall for to aid digestion. It makes a beautiful golden colored tea. And I like to roast the seeds before I steep them, because it just adds that extra, expresses the oil of the herb, and it adds that extra flavor. And also some of the traditional recipes from India call for like roasting these herbs and grinding them and making drinks out of them too. So I'm going to continue on with this. I'm cutting up 4 cups of squash, and I want to just get that going. And this recipe will be emailed to you. Don't expect you to follow me along right now, but I'm going to load up this cup with these. And the other thing I do for myself, for convenience sake here, is we compost. So I just take, when I've been peeling the squash, and I just put it in here for the compost. Some people do like to take these peels, any kind of peels, not the stem, but the peel, and put it in a stock pot and make vegetable stock from it. You can do that adding onions and things, and you would just end up throwing that away afterwards, but you'd steep them. You'd slow cook them. Okay, so I'm gonna continue cutting. this. See what we get for, because we're going to be sauteing this and then cooking it in either, you could cook it in vegetable broth, you could cook it in water. Today I'm not going to make this fully vegan. I have some open chicken stock, so I'm going to actually be using that. Hold on a second. Just want to turn my phone off. There. Okay. So that's pretty close to 4 cups. I might do a little more. I think I'll do a little more to just show you how I cut squash. Everybody has their own way, but I like to open it up. Isn't that lovely? There's the squash inside. And I take a serrated spoon. This is actually a grapefruit spoon to open, take out the seeds. I mean, you can roast these seeds. You could wash these seeds, take the pulp out, wash the seeds, roast the squash seeds, you know, and that's lovely. That's wonderful. And these squashes I know are organic, so that's another thing you could try. So I'm going to just cut that, and I have to peel a little bit of it. Peel the skin off. Sometimes peeling is my least favorite thing, but when I'm alone in the kitchen, I will put music on. I mean, how many people do that? Raise your hand. You know, put something on. You have a lot of people have programs now that play music instantly, so you can put on almost anything depending upon what mood you want. Because actually, in Ayurveda and probably in other countries too, if the cook is happy, we know the food is going to taste great. So listen to music, can make you happy, and that's what I like to do. So here we are, cutting that. Good way to hold a knife is to hold the edge. Put your 2 fingers around the bottom near the handle, and then if you need control, you put the other hand on the top, so you're going like that. You just want to watch it, of course. I think this knife actually needs another sharpening. So I'd say that's 4 cups of the squash. I'm just going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to go get my recipe here. And so I'm actually, next thing I'm going to do, I like to prepare before I start cooking. I really like to get everything set up. So I'm going to take this leek is from our garden. I've already cleaned it. And I'm going to use a leek for this recipe. So I'm cutting it in half. I can show you what it looks like on that. The beautiful green, white, pale color. And I'm going to just cut a little bit off the ends because they weren't quite clean. Yeah, good. Then I'm just going to start cutting this. It calls for about a half a cup of leeks, so I don't need a lot. I'll just save this for later, wrap it up and use it for something else. So, leeks are wonderful. They have you can do a lot with leeks. You can just saute leeks and put them in almost any soup. Traditionally, people make a potato leek soup. I like to try potato leek soup with sweet potatoes, and that's pretty tasty. So this calls for, like I say, about a half a cup of minced leeks. I think that's pretty much over, but that's all right. Maybe not. Ooh, pretty good. Yep. So we're going to end up sauteing this. I may not be able to bring the camera over there because it's attached to my computer. But the other thing I like about leeks as opposed to onions are pretty strong because they don't make you cry. You know, your eyes can get a little watery, but not as much. I'm going to just wash this knife. Do that, wash my hands again. So eating soups in the fall is a really great because we've come from the harsh kind of dryness of the summer when the sun beats down and it takes the moisture out of the earth. So fall is considered, summer is considered when the sun is strong and it's pitta season. Pitta is fire and water. It's that heat. You can even see it with the humidity. In the fall, things start to dry out. The leaves come off the trees. The air gets drier. And so we're in the Vata season, which is air and space. And to balance that out, we need to bring in some moisture and warmth. And it's different for everybody. Everybody has different constitutions. So for instance, if you're trying to lose weight, you may not add a lot of moisture or oil to your diet, but you just may add a little, and you can do other things to adjust that. If you're underweight, you may add much more oil. You may end up taking things like avocado, and putting that on adding that to your diet because it's got wonderful oils in it. So that's just one of the ways we balance things here. I'm going to move this water because it's going to be in the way. So this water is going to take its time to do its little cooking, and I'll use it throughout the day. Turn that off for a minute. And I'm going to saute these things. I already have some olive oil and cilantro that I just put together last night. We were using it for something else actually, and I thought I'd save it because that's probably enough garlic, maybe a little more garlic. My husband grows garlic, so we've got this beautiful varieties of garlic. Music is one variety, Georgian Fire is another, Polish Gin. They all have different qualities. They're all different sizes. Garlic is planted in the fall. It's an heirloom. It's related to the onion family, but it grows in the spring. It comes up, so it has to be planted in the fall and heavily fertilized in the spring. I know that. And then there's other steps you do to make it, to grow that garlic. Understand that you don't grow garlic in the same bed every year. You move it because it takes so much from the soil. So I'm just gonna kind of add a little more garlic to this soup. Excuse me. Now, some of you may be waking up in the morning with a little bit of congestion or, some people call it allergies, but when we're in the shoulder season, a lot of times that happens because the kapha, the water element in us is kind of rising and trying to move out, so it moves out through orifice, right through the nose, through the sinuses. And one way you can alleviate that is by adding more moisture to your diet, adding more juicy vegetables, eating soups and things like that. It really helps with that condition. So this also calls for a little bit of cinnamon, apple cider. So I have organic apple cider that's not without preservatives, and it calls for half a cup of apple cider. Like I say, I'll give you the recipe for this. No problem with that. So I'm gonna just go over and get my instructions. So we're going to add the oil, and we're going to coat, and we're going to add the squash because we're going to coat the squash with the oil, and we're just going to slowly saute that. We're going to soften up the squash a little bit. We get to a point where we're almost caramelizing the squash, and then we're going to be adding in the stock and letting it do its thing and adding all the other things. So I'm going to just check. Let me see. I'm going to add, what inspired me to change this recipe is I'm adding a little bit of miso instead of the salt, because I really like to use miso in the fall. Like I say, it's got probiotics in it. It's a little bit of fermented food is okay for you. So I'm going to open this up. And I'm just going to take that and put it in with the liquid of the liquid, the cider, because miso is a paste. It's pressed and fermented and let sit in these, I think they're vats. So it creates, you have to kind of soften it up and let it stir it into the product you've got. In fact, I'll take a, excuse me for a minute, I'm going to take a whisk. The other things you can, other handy things you need are whisks. Of course, this is a small whisk, but that really helps. And I am going to add the small amount of cider vinegar. It says, what I've suggested is we just use about a half a teaspoon. I'll measure. Probably a good idea. Yeah. So, the trick is not to measure over your food, because in case you go too far, you add too much. So put your spoon away from your liquids, even if you risk, a drop or two, losing a drop or two. So this is pretty liquid. So I'm gonna just start with adding this oil to the pan. I'm gonna heat the pan up. I'm gonna add this oil to the bottom of the pan. I'm probably going to turn that down a little bit. Sometimes I like to add my spices into the oil because it tempers them. So I think I'm going to add that cinnamon right away. And I'm going to turn that right down. We don't want to burn it. Let's see, what do I want? So it's going to be in there cooking. I don't know if you really can't see it here, but trust me, it's there. And I'm going to be adding the squash. Some time. Just stirring it around and just coating the squash with oil. Right. I think I need to keep this out here now. Move that. My scraps. Move the scraps. And so it's going to take about 3 to 5 minutes until they're caramelized, and then I'll add the lighter things like the shallots and the garlic. I already had the garlic in the sequence we have here. We'd add the garlic later, but I think that's fine. I'm just going to add these 3 things. Excuse me, a little more oil here. And like I said, I am going to get my stock. I'm not going to use, whoops, not that. Hey, where are you? Stock? Did I already pick it up? Well, maybe I don't have any. All right. Well, in that case, I won't add my stock. We'll use water. That's fine. And I'm going to use this to make it a bisque. I'm going to use almond milk today. You can use coconut milk in this, and it gives it, if you like that, with canned coconut milk, make sure you shake it up and use, homogenize it. But I like to use a non-dairy option of this rice milk, and this is only going to be 1/4 of a cup. So I've got here, I've got a 1/4 cup here. I'm going to measure that out now. It's not a lot. It's just enough to give it a little bit of flavor. This is a new almond milk I discovered, and you may already be familiar with it. It's called Califia. It's Califia Farms, and it's really good. It seems to have a nice texture to it. I know some people do make their own almond milk, and I used to do that, but almonds being organic almonds being very precious, I just find it's for me it's not a real option to do that. That back. So I've got those things ready, liquids ready to add to the soup, plus the cups of water that we'll add. And personally as a cook, I like to clean up as I go, because I think it just, it makes it easier for moving on to the next thing. So I'm just going to clean this cutting board. Rub it off a little bit. If I need it, I probably will for the apple that I'm going to be cutting up, because we used a little bit of apple and a little more cilantro for garnishing here. I'm gonna check my, yep. I just want to check your food. So I think that cooked water has probably been maybe, I'm not sure what time it is. Yeah, it's probably been at least 10, 15 minutes. It hasn't been full rolling boil, but it's been steaming and it's been releasing all these gases. Yeah, actually there are bubbles on the bottom. So I'm going to turn that off. And, having it warm is great. Having it cool is good too. And you will notice if you try cooking water that it feels lighter. There's something about it. It just lightens it up. And it is, like I say, very good for the digestion. Another thing you can do with squash is, whoops, I'm going to go over here, is I have a recipe for macaroni and cheese using butternut squash. Actually, it's very, very good. I will send this to you too, but it calls for the miso. It calls for the some other ingredients, and you can use instead of I'm not a big fan of macaroni from hard wheat, but I do like the rice macaroni. And also there's now macaroni made from red lentils and, all of these different things. So this is a really fun one, mac and cheese. There's no cheese in it. It's got butternut squash. It's got tahini, which is sesame seed paste. It's got the miso and a little bit of stock. And for the top, you put on roasted nuts. So it's similar to mac and cheese, but it's not. And I have made it last year, and it's really, on a cold day, it satisfies that creamy richness without being overbearingly, there's no dairy, so it's not sticky or heavy or anything. Dairy products like yogurt fall into that sour category, which is, can be difficult. Not really encouraged to just eat raw yogurt. Usually we make it into a thin drink to aiding digestion. And we can talk about that sometime. Let me get back to let me cover up my spices. So this little handy box keeps them all. I can switch them out during the season. This I have black mustard seeds here. And in fact, I'd probably add some of that to here, just as why not? As a treat. Experimenting can be really fun. If you know the properties of things, it's fine. This is cumin, just like the cumin I have here in seed form. And we're gonna roast some of that in a minute. So this was ground. So I have cumin, I have those brown mustard seeds. I have turmeric, cinnamon, and coriander, and a little bit of cardamom and coriander. That's what I'm trying to say. Coriander seed is the seed of the cilantro herb. Right, back to stirring. Watching that. Oh yeah. So it's just coated and they're very hard. So this is going to take longer than the class here, obviously, to do this, but I'm probably going to just let that cook a little bit, and let's go over and make some tea, why don't we? So I'm going to just put this back and throw in there. That over there. So I'm going to take and roast these seeds. And I'm just going to take a tablespoon. I buy these seeds whole, and if I want to make if I want to make coriander powder, I'll just grind them in that spice grinder. So here's cumin. Coriander. Coriander seed. Getting my words mixed up. I don't need to do that. Cumin looks like little round, almost a half moon. They look like little slivers. So I'm going to take a tablespoon of that. I'm going to be generous because I'm probably going to take these spices and grind them for another type of drink, tea drink. And then I'm going to take half that amount of fennel, just about half that. Watch that. So here we have and I'm going to roast these spices. So I'm watching this. This looks pretty good. It's not burning. I'm going to come over here and get that going. And what I'll do right now, since that's cooking so slowly, is I'm just going to add these leeks. You can make this recipe with onions, with shallots. Shallots are a little mild tasting. We didn't grow any this year, so but we did grow. We have an abundance of leeks, so I'm going to be doing a lot of things. I guess there's a funny joke that people do now where they say, "I have a leak underneath my sink," and they put a leak, a leak. This is a leak, and they send someone a message. "I have a leak in my sink," which is, obviously a joke. Our sink is fine. The plumbing is great, but just one of these weird memes. So that is going to be cooking, and I'm going to watch this dry roasting. I like to take it, and I'll take anything I've got. This is actually I think this is an implement for spaghetti, to stir spaghetti because it has the slots in it, but I like to use it for, watching my spices, or I'll use another wooden spoon. I have another wooden spoon over here. More of a spatula type. And I'm going to be just watching these to make sure that I'll hear a pop. You'll hear the cilantro seeds. These little seeds will start popping, and you'll notice. If you were here, you'd smell an aroma. And what's going to happen then is I'm going to end up putting it in this teapot and then put boiling water in it. Now, when this soup is done and we put in we're going to let it sit after it's been cooked, and it's going to be chunky. And you might want to take an immersion blender or a blender and pour it in the blender and make it smooth, because it's not supposed to be chunky. Just these chunks of wash. And I hear the background noise. So they're beginning to brown up. Beginning to brown. Smells pretty good. I'm probably going to turn this off because this is my hot burner. I have a new stove and I have to memorize it. Yeah, this side used to be the hot. This is the hot now, and it's really ramping up. So what I love about gas cooking is once you turn it off, boom, the heat's gone. Except I'm in a cast iron pan, which my cast iron pans, I have 3 different sizes. They're the best. I have a lot of respect for cast iron. Happy Halloween. So I keep keep a mitt handy. So when you're doing that cooking, you're not going to burn yourself. That looks pretty good. So I can safely let those sit without burning them in the pan. The pan's gotten hot, definitely gotten hot, but they're not going to burn. So we're going to just sit there for a few minutes because I really want them to roast up. When they roast up like that, they get such a wonderful aroma and smell. Let me jump back to my notes. So let me just review a little bit about what to eat for fall, because like I said before, fall, the season, we're moving from the humid summer to dry fall. Just think of it that way. And so we're moving from the Pitta dosha to the Vata dosha in the season, because every season has its predominant dosha, and then our bodies are composed of these elements, and every body has a different predominant dosha or doshas, and we change over the years. The years have a predominant dosha. Younger years, the Kapha dosha growing up, then we have the Pitta dosha with the ambition, and then we have the Vata dosha with the wisdom years. Wisdom years going up. So we're balancing these things, and apples are really the fruit of the month for balancing. They're sweet, they're juicy. All right, did I wash that? I'm gonna rewash that. I don't trust that. Well, it doesn't matter. Nice to have a little garlic on it, that's fine. So apples, right? These are Cortland apples, and I'm actually going to be using them with the skin. So the skin is on. I'm going to core them, and I'm going to go back to this one. Has a beautiful red center. That's amazing. It has this redness down here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just lovely. Just lovely color to this Cortland. You know, all the trick when you cut an apple horizontally, you get that pretty star inside. It's just kind of fun to look at it. All right, let's go back and check that. I'm hearing steam sounds coming from here. So it's beginning to caramelize. And actually, I'm probably just going to take a little tiny bit of this moisture and put it in there just to prevent any scorching. I want to see it caramelize for sure. If I was cooking here alone, I probably wouldn't be doing these two things at once. I like to do one thing at a time, but I'm trying to show you a couple of different things. So let's go back to, get my hot pad. I don't know if you noticed, this has witches on it. This is a little Halloween, my theme for today, because we're day out. So I'm going to take some of these spices and put them in here. No, I'm just not measuring it. There's a family joke. My mother-in-law, who was a very good cook, was probably pretty precise too in her measurements, and used to ask me how much water I put in when I was cooking oatmeal for the kids when they were little, and I just was like, I don't know, I just pour it in. I think it used to make her a little bit nervous. So I'm going to take that, and we're just going to let that sit. I'm not going to add any limes or lemons. I was just had those out to show you what those were for. So that's coming up. Yeah. So now I'm going to add this mixture in, and I'm going to add some water. And since I've boiled that water, why not use hot water, right? Because you're one step ahead. So this is about 2 cups of water. 1, 2. So what are some of the favorite things you like to cook? I'd always like to hear what people like to eat. What do you like to eat? It's always interesting to hear about that, what some favorite foods are, or maybe foods from your family passed down recipes. The first cookbook I received, I'll show you. It's pretty worn. The first book I got was from my mother, and it was Fanny Merritt Farmer. I don't know how many of you remember this, but this is so worn that it's actually coming apart. But I think I have a date in here. I was just a young little whippersnapper. Yes, Merry Christmas to Karen from Mom, 1971. I was 12 years old. What can I say? No, just kidding. But you can see it's worn out. But she has some really good advice. I mean, she has everything basic. This is basic American cooking, But she does talk about herbs, the aromatic herbs, right here. The aromatic herbs, and she has cooking with herbs, parsley, chives, some herbs, familiar herbs and their uses. Basil, it has a clover-like flavor, and she tells you what it's good for, and chervil and chives. So You know, Fanny had it going. I mean, she was a basic cook for a while, and then I think I graduated to the Moosewood cookbook. A lot of people may be familiar with that. When vegetarian came along in the 70s, they were really concerned about making sure people had enough protein, so they loaded up with a lot of cheeses, which is we know we've grown from there in this food movement, um, food-based movement, anti-inflammatory diets, paleo diets, vegan, vegetarianism. You know, it all shows you that food is medicine. Indeed, I'm just looking at the clock to make sure we're still running in good show. So yeah, food is medicine. So what you take in does affect your body. So here we are with my apples. We're going to use this for garnish, and I'm also going to use a little cilantro. So I'm going to get a bowl. I'm going to put that in a bowl. And I still will remember to add this milk, but I'm going to do that at the end. The non-dairy milk. I'm looking for, cilantro. Yeah. Actually. Now here's a good way of storing, if you buy store-bought cilantro you want to keep it fresh, is that you put it in a glass of water. When you take it home, you may cut off the end roots a little bit and put it in a glass of water, and then put a plastic bag over it, maybe tie that up and store it like this, and it will keep longer. Have you noticed if you buy an herb, sometimes they turn black, they get old? Oh, there's a renegade something in here, and it's not cilantro. My goodness, I think it's basil. I'm going to look at that later. So I'm just going to take out a little bit of cilantro. You want to use some of the stems because the flavor is in the stems of cilantro as well as the leaves. I'm just going to cut off the bottom edges. I'm going to put this aside. Goodbye, my little cilantro plant. I have one growing in the windowsill for later that came from our garden. We still have vegetables out there we have under hoops, under remade cloths, that it's gonna last for a while. Now I'm gonna rinse this because store-bought cilantro can have little bits of sand in it. I'm gonna rinse it before I cut it up. Jumped around. Yep. Go. All right, so I'm going to cut up the cilantro and the apple for the garnish for the soup, which may not be ready by the time we have to adjourn. Sorry to say. If it was a warm day and you live nearby, you could come by and we could sit outside and have a cup of soup, right? The proper social distancing. Not to happen, but you might enjoy making this soup. If your family likes different, if you like to explore different things, and this is a vegan-based, you can make it, like I say, you could put in a chicken stock, make it with a light chicken stock, sodium-free or something, or you could buy your own vegetable stock. I haven't had the time to make my own vegetable stock. I know it's a doable thing. Sometimes people take these things and they take out the fruits and stuff and the insides of the squash. But like I say, they'll take the peels and they'll freeze everything and they'll make a stock later on. So the original recipe actually mentioned garnishing with this, but I think I'm going to just add this to the soup because it will give it a nice flavor. You can add squash and the sweetness of. You could set some aside for garnish if you want to be fancy, or you could just put it all together. About 10 minutes left. I'll show you what that tea looks like. I'm going to save some aside. I may cut it finer later. Got that time. So it's got that green and red color, like for Christmas. Let's get that nice green and red color. Well, then I'm going to take this and add it. No, you don't have to have a lot of spices to really experiment with them. If you just had your cumin and coriander, maybe a little fennel and turmeric, you can do a lot with that. Salt, pepper, black pepper really is a wonderful additive. I'm probably going to add some of that to this. So I'll show you what this looks like right now, and it's going to take a while. So it's got that red, it's got squash in it, it's got green from the cilantro. But I'm going to let that just sit while we go back to, we'll look at the tea. I haven't even added the milk yet. I may wait on that. I really want to let that cook down a little bit. And I think it's going to take longer than the 10 minutes we have left. Let me show you the tea. Here's the pot, but I need the strainer. So because there's seeds in this, you know, we're going to strain it. Otherwise, you'd be drinking the seeds, not so pleasant. The benefits of this is very good. It's a little bit of a diuretic, but not terribly. It seems to clean the system, this cumin, coriander, fennel, you know, fennel tea. And I would just take the seeds and put them back in this teapot and let them just steep a little longer. I could be drinking that all day. It's refreshing. I'll pour it into a cup. Or actually, you can pour it into a glass. It's not going to break anything. Yeah. So it's this little bit of brown, of golden color tea, and it smells a little bit of the roasted herbs. It has a clean taste. So when you taste it, it helps, like I said, it helps the digestion. Another thing you can do is take ginger root. And we actually grew this ginger root in a window box. We actually grew it, you know, you put the tubers in and then eventually they'll sprout and grow. But you can take ginger root and cut it up and put that in boiling water and make your own ginger tea. And it's really good. It really aids digestion. Let's see, like I said, clean up is part of what I do. I might taste that and see if I need to add, you know, I'm thinking I need to balance it out, maybe add a little pepper, black pepper. So let me just give that a second to see what this base is like here. I think it's going to need more salt and definitely pepper. Yeah. Pepper to that. So tasting as you go along is really a good thing. You know, obviously. Salt. Like that. Just a tiny, you know, you can't take it away, but salt does bring out the flavor. And salt is actually, you know, one of those things that you can use and it can be a healthful thing. Salt is found in some hard cheeses. That hard cheese maybe not as easy on our digestion as the soft cheeses, but you know, you can use it with little respect. I didn't talk about, and I should talk about right now, just the relative impact of food in the order from the greatest impact they have on our bodies to the least. And the first number one is actually spices. So your spices like, you know, basil, which are an herb, you know, herbs are spicy. The spices I had in the spice box, the cinnamon or the coriander here, these all impact the body first. The second one is animal products. So for good or ill, animal protein has an impact on the body, secondly in our health. And the third is dairy. The fourth are oils. So oils, using oils like I use olive oils. I make my own clarified butter called ghee, and ghee has a low, um, it has good fats in it, so it doesn't create the high cholesterol from regular butter because you're taking out the milk solids, and it's some people can tolerate that, they can't tolerate dairy. The fifth one is sweeteners, and sweeteners could be everything from the cane sugar to honey to maple syrup. I add, different things in my, in fact, I might add a little maple syrup to this recipe, just like a half a tablespoon, just to give it a little brightness and sweetener to that. I may add that to my notes. We'll see. So sweeteners used judiciously, even in dried fruits are sweet, of course. One of the things I made today, I can't show you because we only have 4 minutes left, but I had for breakfast a really quick breakfast of rolled oats and um, with chopped up figs that I let sit in almond milk overnight with a little cinnamon, and that made a meal in a mason jar. So that's a helpful. That recipe comes from Kate O'Donnell's book, Everyday Ayurveda. Thank you, Kate. And then the sixth one are nuts and seeds, and the seventh one are legumes like lentils. And the eighth is vegetables, 9 is fruits, and 10 is grains. So that's the range of what impact foods have on you, beginning from the top. So, it's just an interesting fact. Fall spice mix that I ground. It has got cumin, coriander, and fennel in it, plus turmeric. That's what makes it orange. And you can use this and sprinkle it on your food. So that's something that you can consider. Let's go back and check that food. It's bubbling nicely now. So I'm going to let that sit. I won't be able to show you the finished product because it's going to take longer than an hour. It is nice sometimes to have meals that take 30 minutes. And I think if you probably had done this singly, you might find it would be about 30 minutes for that. That's about covers all we have. In 2 weeks, we're going to have another class. I believe it's going to be on, I think it's going to be on the genius of grains, but I'm not sure what we have up in line. But I'm going to be showing you how to make flatbreads again. Have a griddle on the stove so we can do that. And flatbreads with non-wheat choices like using chickpea flours and buckwheat, for the winter. So I hope you can join me. Thank you very much for today's coming today, and have a good day. Bye-bye.